Our breaking news in federal court. We have just learned former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan has been sentenced to 90 months in prison, so roughly 7.5 years, along with a $2.5 million fine as well.
We're talking about the sentencing of former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan.
Right. And we're basing this deep dive on excerpts from a Chicago Sun-Times article that really gets into the details.
Our goal here is to, cut through some of the noise.
Exactly. Help you quickly get the core facts in the article, understand the context, and maybe pull out what's most surprising or important.
And the source itself really sets the stage for Madigan's importance, doesn't it?
It does. It paints him as, well, the longest-serving state house leader in the whole country.
Yeah, 36 years as Illinois House Speaker. That's almost hard to grasp. 1983 to 2021, basically, just a small gap in there.
And the article uses phrases like all-powerful political wizard.
Right, who wielded vast influence. That really tells you the kind of power we're talking about here, setting up why this sentencing is such a landmark event.
Absolutely. It frames the scale of it. Yeah. So let's get to the core event, the sentencing itself. What did the article report?
So the sentence handed down by Judge John Blakey was 7.5 years in prison.
7.5 years. And a fine.
And a big one, a $2.5 million fine. He's due to report to prison October 13th.
Okay. Now, the article puts that sentence length into perspective, right?
Yeah.
Calling it one of the harshest in Chicago for public corruption in years.
Yeah, it does a comparison. It's more than triple what former Alderman Ed Burke got. He only received 2 years.
Wow, triple Burke sentence.
And it's more than the 6.5 years former Governor George Ryan got way back in, 2006?
Right.
But it wasn't quite what prosecutors wanted. They asked for 12.5 years.
Okay.
And it's less than, Blagojevich's original 14-year sentence. So it's up there, definitely serious, but not the absolute maximum they were pushing for.
That context is really helpful. The article also details the prosecutor's argument for that tougher sentence. What was Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Stryker pushing for?
Well, her argument, based on the article, really focused on Madigan's unique position, his sheer longevity.
Like he outlasted governors.
Exactly. She said, governors came and went, Madigan stayed. The point being, he had this huge opportunity to, set a standard for honest government.
But didn't take it, in her view.
Right. She argued he just fit right into the mold of yet another corrupt leader in Illinois, used his immense political power for himself like a double-edged sword. And she stressed that a strong message was needed because, well, the public is paying attention.
That's a powerful argument. The missed opportunity, the public trust aspect. But maybe the most dramatic part of this, according to the article, was Madigan deciding to testify.
Oh, yeah. The source calls that a stunning decision. Him taking the stand to tell his side of the story.
And how did Judge Blakey take that? The article suggests not well.
Not well at all. The phrasing used is that the judge didn't buy it. He apparently called the testimony a nauseating display.
Whoa, nauseating display. Did he say anything directly to Madigan?
He did. The article quotes him directly from the bench. "You lied, sir. You lied."
Wow, just point blank. You lied, sir. Did the judge point to specific things he thought were lies?
Yes, the article details several instances the judge brought up. One was Madigan downplaying his friendship with Michael McClain.
His supposed famous friendship.
Right. When asked if he trusted McClain with sensitive stuff, Madigan apparently just said, sometimes. The judge clearly didn't believe that was the whole truth.
Okay, what else?
Another big one was about Danny Solis. Madigan testified he was just contemplating recommending Solis for his state board seat.
But the judge saw more to it.
Exactly. The article explains the judge believed, based on the evidence, that Madigan explicitly asked Solis for help getting business for his private law firm in exchange for that potential recommendation.
Ah, so a quid pro quo, not just thinking about it.
Precisely. And maybe the biggest one the judge called out was Madigan just flat out denying his role in the whole ComEd bribery scheme.
So it really sounds like the judge felt Madigan tried to mislead the court, and that testimony backfired spectacularly.
It seems that way from the reporting. It clearly weighed heavily on the judge's mind.
Did the judge offer any sort of broader thoughts on the case? Beyond calling the testimony nauseating?
He did. The source includes some really interesting commentary. He called the whole situation really sad.
Sad.
Yeah, and he described Madigan as a dedicated public servant apart from the crimes proven, which is quite a statement.
Quite juxtaposition.
And then he brought up Abraham Lincoln. Said something like, "It's really hard to be honest, Abe," calling him a unicorn.
Okay. Where was he going with that?
His point seemed to be being great is hard, but being honest is not. It's hard to commit crimes. It actually takes effort. Kind of flipping the script.
That's a pointed remark, implying it takes effort to be corrupt.
And the judge made sure to say the sentence wasn't based on rhetoric or myth.
Like the nicknames.
Exactly. He mentioned the myth of the Velvet Hammer or some folklore characterization of the Wizard of Springfield. He wanted it grounded in reality, the evidence, and Madigan's conduct, including that testimony.
Really emphasizes how central that decision to testify became.
Oh.
Okay, let's pivot back to the jury's verdict after that long trial. What were the specific convictions?
So after the 4-month trial, over 60 witnesses apparently, the jury convicted Madigan on 2 main counts.
Which were?
The ComEd conspiracy and the plot involving getting Danny Solis that state board seat.
And the ComEd piece, the article laid out the mechanics of that.
Yeah, it explained ComEd paid out about $1.3 million to 5 allies of Madigan. The goal was essentially to keep Madigan happy so he'd view ComEd's legislation favorably in the House.
Okay, so a clear pay-to-play scenario, alleged and convicted. Now, we've mentioned Michael McClain and Danny Solis. The article clarified their roles.
It did. McClain is described as Madigan's close friend, a former lawmaker himself, and importantly, a lobbyist for ComEd.
And served as his messenger.
Yes, the article calls him Madigan's messenger in Springfield. And importantly, McClain was convicted for his part in that ComEd scheme, but in a different trial. He's still waiting for sentencing.
Okay, so McClain convicted separately. What about Solis? His role is very different based on the source.
Dramatically different. Solis, the former city councilman, became an undercover mole for the FBI.
Wore a wire.
Testified against Madigan, and the really striking outcome for him, highlighted in the article, he walked away from the investigation without even a criminal conviction.
Wow, that's quite the contrast. The friend gets convicted, the mole who testified walks free.
It's a major point in the article, and it even mentions some pretty colorful background details about Solis that came out, despite no charges.
Not quite.
Things involving Viagra, massage parlors, even a mention of a suitcase of Chinese money he apparently described. Just adds another layer to the whole story presented.
Wild. Were there charges the jury didn't convict Madigan on?
Yeah, the article mentions they didn't return a verdict on the really broad racketeering charge.
Okay.
Or on some specific allegations involving McClain and Solis that weren't part of those 2 main convictions.
Got it. And are there others tied up in this, still waiting for their day in court, sentencing-wise?
Yes. The source says former ComEd CEO Ann Promagere, another ex-ComEd lobbyist John Hooker, and Jay Doherty, who used to head the City Club, are all due for sentencing soon.
So more chapters to come. Shifting gears a bit, how did Madigan himself seem after the sentence came down? What did the article observe?
Well, it describes him having a smile on his face near the courtroom.
A smile.
Yeah, and a slight smile remained when he was in the lobby. Walked out quickly with his daughter and his lawyers.
Any mention of his other daughter, Lisa Madigan, the former Attorney General?
The article specifically points out she was noticeably absent.
Interesting detail. What about his lawyers? What arguments did they make during the hearing?
His lead attorney, Dan Collins, argued it shouldn't be about, rhetoric, but reality. The reality of Mike, as he put it.
Trying to counter the Wizard of Springfield image.
Seems like it. He claimed Madigan did not live his life to seek power, but rather tried to lead his party. Collins even said he was proud to call him a friend.
And there were efforts beyond legal arguments, too, right? Letters of support.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Yep.
The source says Madigan submitted nearly 250 letters supporting leniency.
250 letters.
Plus, apparently, a video plea from his wife, who the article describes as ailing. She reportedly said, "I really don't exist without him," and stressed needing his care.
That's powerful testimony. Did Madigan speak himself in court?
He did. The article reports him saying, "I'm truly sorry for putting the people of the state of Illinois through this."
An apology?
Kind of. He also said, "I tried to do my best, and I'm not perfect." He asked the judge to let him care for his wife and spend my final days with my family.
Didn't the article point out a contradiction there?
It did, immediately. It highlights that even while saying he was sorry for the process, Madigan still insists upon his innocence on the actual crimes. And crucially, took no responsibility for his crimes. That tension is really apparent in the reporting.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway from the source, the apology versus the denial. The article also gave a little background on Madigan's origins.
Just briefly, mentioned him growing up in the 13th Ward, his father involved in unions and local politics, knew Mayor Richard J. Daley, and that Madigan himself met Daley early on, got a job at City Hall, became sort of a political disciple. Just context for his political roots.
And this whole investigation, it wasn't recent, right? The article mentioned the timeline.
No, it stretches way back. The feds apparently started looking into things back in 2014.
2014. Wow.
Ron only really became public knowledge in late 2018. Then he got the label Public Official A in 2020, indictment in 2022. And Solis being a mole came out in early 2019. So, yeah, a long, slow burn as described in the source.
Really puts the whole thing in a longer perspective. Lastly, what did the article say about the immediate aftermath? Any comments from the prosecution?
Yeah, the interim U.S. Attorney, Andrew Boutros, gave a statement. He's quoted saying, "Corruption at that level tears at the fabric of a vital governing body."
Strong words.
He praised the investigation team's grit and determination and really stressed the need to send a clear message with this outcome.
And what's the next legal step for Madigan, according to the source? Is he definitely going to prison on October 13th?
Well, his lawyers are appealing the conviction. The article notes they hope to keep him out of prison while that appeal process plays out. So that remains to be seen.
Okay, so that really covers the key points from these article excerpts. Let's try to wrap this up. We've seen a figure described as maybe the most powerful Illinois politician in generations.
Sentenced to a significant prison term, 7.5 years, plus that huge fine, all stemming from corruption convictions tied to his long tenure and influence.
And we've dug into the specifics from the source. The ComEd scheme, the $1.3 million, the plot with Solis for law firm business.
And the roles of those key figures. McClain, the convicted friend, Solis, the mole, who, as the article points out, faced no charges himself in this. Really different paths.
But maybe the most striking element detailed in the article was Madigan testifying.
Absolutely. His decision to take the stand, the judge's incredibly harsh reaction, calling it nauseating, saying, "You lied, sir," and how that perceived dishonesty clearly factored into the judge's thinking and the sentence.
So for you listening, digging into these details from the source material really matters. It gives you a concrete look at how accountability, or the attempt at it, works at these very high levels.
Yeah, you see the mechanics of the alleged corruption described, the consequences laid out in court, even down to how a judge weighs a defendant's words on the stand. It's insight into that difficult intersection of politics, power, and personal conduct.
It really makes you think about how power accumulates and, well, the eventual reach of the law as depicted here.
And it connects back to those points the judge and prosecutor made, Honesty versus greatness, the public watching, the need for a clear message.
So here's something to chew on, drawing from all these threads in our deep dive. Considering the judge's sharp comments on truthfulness, the prosecutor's call for a clear message, and Madigan's own somewhat contradictory statements in court, what does this whole saga, as presented in the source, suggest about the ongoing, maybe uphill, battle to build and maintain trust in our public institutions, and hold even the most entrenched, powerful figures accountable for actions stretching back years, even decades?